some of the concerns from other political parties. Peter Obi, the one who I keep saying has won the Nigerian elections narrative, is also talking about having actually won the election. Peter Obi says that he will go to court and show Nigerians that he actually did win the election. Also, Atiku Abubakar, I've been watching his press conference earlier today on Channels TV, and you have to have compassion for Atiku when you watch his press conference. He traced his background in Nigerian politics and how he almost died together with his son, who was also in the room during the days of MKO Abiola and the resistance of Abacha's military rule. Atiku seemed to have paid his dues. He's very pained tonight, believing that the election had been rigged. We'll get into the details tonight. Al-Hassan Bello has been crunching the numbers for a day and a half, and he's going to tell us why Nigerians voted in particular areas the way they voted. We'll start, however, with John Dramani Mahama, because President Mahama has launched his campaign, and now it's no longer, and now it's, okay, sorry viewers, I asked for something, so, all right. So we start with John Dramani Mahama because tonight President Mahama has launched his campaign, and he's launched it in the Volta Regional Capital in Ho. He wants to make a political statement about his relationship with the NDC Volta region, which of course is the NDC's stronghold. So we'll be talking a lot about President Mahama's campaign tonight. We have isolated a few things that President Mahama said. He talked about being the voice of experience, and that he should be voted and elected because he's the voice of experience. He talked about the reason why he needs to be re-elected. You can imagine that his handlers had prepared the speech, and they had asked themselves the question, what are we saying about John Mahama? What is he going to say about himself? Why he should be re-elected? I think they dealt with that. So there's President Mahama speaks to that in 3 minutes 42 seconds as isolated by our video editor, and we're going to show you what he said about that. Then in the third video of President Mahama, he decides to make some promises, which is also very good, because we always were anticipating, if President Mahama launches a campaign for a second bid for presidential opportunity, having lost 2020, what is he going to say about promising Ghanaians? And he did a few things. He made a few promises, fundamentally in also reviewing or amending Article 71 of the Constitution. We'll talk about President Mahama's history in 2015 of expressing a desire to amend Article 71. It was not achieved then. He says that he will be able to achieve it now. I've been listening to the radio and the commentaries and all of that, and President Mahama also talked about having 60 ministers. He says he's going to have 60 ministers of state. So we'll deal with all of that, isn't it? Now, I've been listening to radio commentary about it, and I heard Felix Ofosu-Kwakye. He sounded quite intelligent on Joy FM this evening. The question that was asked of him, which sort of irritated him a little bit, was that President Mahama has been in power before. Why is he talking about things that he couldn't do when he was in power, and that he says he's going to do them? Ofosu-Kwakye was quite irritated. He said that it's not a good question, because when the NPP is campaigning for office, and they say things, for instance, in 2008, the NPP campaign, President Kufuor was not going to be the president of the country because he had run his term. NPP campaigned on certain things that President Kufuor could not achieve. Felix Ofosu-Kwakye's question is that why didn't they ask the NPP that you were in power before, you couldn't do it? I think the difference that Felix must recognize tonight is that we are talking about John Dramani Mahama, the same person who's been in charge of affairs, the same person who has the power of the pen, the same person who has the power of legislation, and the same person who had all the power to achieve it. We have to find a reason why he didn't do it. Maybe there was a good reason, maybe there wasn't a good reason. What is clear is that President Mahama is battling for the minds of Ghanaians in terms of credibility, in terms of what he's able to do. Haven't done it before, because the easiest way for President Mahama to run this campaign is to say that I did it before, I can do it again. And that's what happened in Malaysia when the old Prime Minister came. That's what happened with Winston Churchill when he lost elections after the Second World War in Britain as Prime Minister. He came back and ran again, and Winston Churchill had a very simple statement. He said, I did it before, I can do it again. President Mahama must be able to say that I've done it before and I can do it again. I think that's what he means by talking about experience, but we'll digest that in some detail later tonight. Also, we will then go to Nigeria. Okay, they'll give me the Nigerian. Yes, we'll go to Nigeria now and look at a few details before we deal with the President Mahama issue. Very, very interesting. President Muhammadu Buhari is handing over, most likely will be handing over to Tinubu, but let's get it sorted as we look at some of the numbers that are coming out of Nigeria. And if you crunch those numbers that are coming out of Nigeria, you see something particularly interesting. We're very concerned about the voter turnout in Nigeria tonight, which is showing 27% voter turnout, when the audio visuals that we receive from Nigeria that you can check on social media do not really reflect a low voter turnout. But I'm telling you tonight, that Nigeria's voter turnout, according to the numbers, was 27%. And Lagos had only 1 million people voting in the entire Lagos state. The huge Lagos state we're talking about, the total number of votes put together was just a little over 1 million. I mean, Accra then will have more voters than Lagos. Do you believe that? Well, okay, we'll get into those details in a minute. Let's first look at the montage we showed you. This is the montage of what looks like the new Nigerian leadership. It's 2 minutes long. We'll come back, finish with the Nigerian preliminary introduction, and then we'll deal with President Mahama.
Unity, happiness, and harmony. We must not act like that orchestra that has no direction of a conductor. A serious mandate. I hereby accept it. That mandate to serve you, be your servant, and not be your leader. To work with you and make Nigeria a great country. I take this opportunity also again to appeal to my fellow contestants to let us team up together. It is the only nation we have. It is one country that we must build together.
Okay, good luck to Nigeria. All right, then, let's get to President Mahama was, this is quite separate from President Mahama launching his campaign. It's also important because he was the most senior, most Ghanaian who was at the Nigerian election as an observer. He has something to say, and you know, social media is quite unforgiving. When President Mahama put that information up, and he said something about Mahama criticizes Jean Mensah in Nigeria as he compares the Nigerian interim national electoral, the Nigerian's independent national electoral commission to Ghana's EC. Okay, do we have the text? All right, it says that former President Mahama has said one thing. Former President Mahama has said that one thing that struck him in his pre-election mission in Nigeria for the West African Forum, that's a YF, is the confidence all candidates and parties have expressed in the Independent Electoral Commission. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Because from what we are seeing right now, and I've heard the APC people say that all candidates had expressed an unflinching confidence in the Electoral Commissioner in Nigeria, the professor. They had expressed confidence in him. So what's happening? So President Mahama says that this confidence has been expressed. Is there more of this text that I can read? Okay, so that's what President Mahama is saying, is that all parties had confidence in the Electoral Commission. Now, when he put this up, I think there's a bit more, we don't have it here, but when he put this up, social media then replied President Mahama with videos, particularly MPP people were sending videos to President Mahama about his being critical of the Electoral Commission, because he talks about even the Peace Council. Let's see the video they were sharing. This is President Mahama speaking about people who were critical of Electoral Commission in 2016. Hey, what is that?
Held that the person of the EC chair have become normal. This is unacceptable. But for students of politics, we can see the strategy behind it. It is an old trick in the book. Vilify the referee and reduce the credibility of the referee in the eyes of the public when you can tell you are losing the match. This creates a platform where, when you lose, to discredit and contest the outcome of the match. And this is the underlying cause for all the whining that is taking place against the Electoral Commission at every step of the electoral process.
All right, so that's the video. President Mahama said that those who criticize the Electoral Commission are usually making the point that are usually saving themselves the opportunity to make the point that the Electoral Commission was fraudulent, and that they make the point for students of politics. We know that they make the point because they know that they are going to lose the election. So when President Mahama was critical of Jean Mensa, even abroad, speaking to the Nigerian Electoral Commission, President Mahama was people who in the opposite party were sending the videos that, Mr. President, this is what you said. This is going to be a social media election in 2023. So everything that everyone has said, you must know that they will bring it back to you. They'll play it back at you. Whether you're Dr. Baumia, whether you're President Mahama, whoever you are, they'll bring it back to you. But there's a lot more for us to say about President John Dramani Mahama tonight, because he's launched his campaign. And we also know that the big story from internal NDC story arising out of City News's eyewitness news is that Rojo Metelnunu, who was the official counting agent for President Mahama in the last election, is indicating his support for another candidate in the NDC. We'll play that for you in a minute. But let's get back to the Nigerian situation. And I'm going to explain something very critical. We don't want that to form part of the analysis that Bello will do. So we're going to take that now. It's very interesting, isn't it? If you look at the figures in Nigeria, you would see a certain clear line that if the if the PDP and the Labour Party had come together, most likely, and I say most likely because it's analysis, we need to satisfy the basis of all things being equal. We don't know whether all things were going to be equal, but if you look at just adding the figures, which is non-scientific, I have to say, just adding the figures, you will suggest that perhaps if they had come together as they did in 2019. So this is a poster of Atiku. It says, let's get Nigeria working again. Later on, Donald Trump was talking about that earlier. So I think they picked it from Donald Trump's line. Let's get Nigeria working again. It's Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi. This is the 2019 flyer of their political party on the left of your screen. Now look at the results on the left of your screen. You see it. In that election, APC, which is the ruling party, won 19 seats. This is Muhammadu Buhari at the time. At that time, 55.60% of the votes was garnered by APC. Then in PDP, which is the group that we are talking about, Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar, both of them got 17 seats together, including the Abuja, the FCT. They won 11 votes and got 41.22%. Okay, now they decided to split up in this particular election. And when they decided to split up, this is what you got. So election 2023 results are as follows. They got Bola Tinubu to slip in, the old man they call him, 70-year-old old man they call him. Bola Tinubu slips in with 8.7% of the votes. Atiku Abubakar is gaining 6.9 and Peter Obi is gaining 6.1. Now Peter Obi is the revelation of the election. So if you look at the addition here, if you do Atiku plus Obi, they get 13 million. So maybe the real question for the Nigerian people is not so much that politics has not changed. It's about the decisions that political people make when it gets to the election. I said before that it's only in politics and in sports, actually, football politics and political politics, that you find somebody is going into a ditch. The person who can save him is his enemy, political enemy. So he doesn't want to be saved. He wants to die. It's only in politics that you find that. I've never understood that about politicians. I've hung around them for the longest time, you know that. All of them making certain decisions that will inure to victory can be particularly problematic. When for you, the researcher, or for the analyst, you stand outside and tell them that this is the way you should go. You should pick this man as your running mate. You win the election. They talk like that. They don't seem to. That's what has happened in Nigeria. So for the Nigerian young people and the youth who are crying about the system, it is about understanding compromises. It's very, very important. If these two had paired, there's a high chance that they could have won the election. But why couldn't they pair? There was concern about some rotational leadership, rotational presidency of some sort. Peter Obi believed that it was his time to lead. In fact, you have to agree that among the three candidates, in terms of the one with the freshness, was Peter Obi. Peter Obi was going to carry the narrative of any new voter, and all of that was going to be Peter Obi. Later tonight, we'll be coming to understand the voter turnout situation in Nigeria, because we have been made to believe that the election had a high voter turnout. When Alhassan Bello comes, he'll be telling us that the election actually had a less than 30% voter turnout. How is that possible? 200 million Nigerians, 90 million were registered on the electoral roll. 24 something million cast their vote on Tuesday and Wednesday. Was it Tuesday, Saturday, and was it Saturday? Saturday and Sunday. They cast their votes on Saturday and Sunday. 24 million only. The entire Lagos state. How many votes were garnered? Only 1 million between the two candidates. Just about 1 million votes. Accra will be recording more votes than 1 million. So really, I'm not understanding that. But that's a conversation we'll have when Alhassan Bello joins us. So this is the analysis I want to end with. That let's look at this closely. For those of us in Ghana, we have been showing you the things that happen in Nigeria that happen in Ghana. Sometimes we don't look, but it happens. We think it won't happen, but it will happen. People have to start looking at choices and pairings and all of that. It's very, very important. You're getting into a crucial election. Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar both must have themselves to blame tonight that they have not received the certificate of return from the Electoral Commission, that either of them have not received a certificate, or both of them together. The certificate has gone to the old man Bola Tinubu, because the two of them refused to see eye to eye for the interest of Nigeria. If it was so bad that Nigerians didn't want Bola Tinubu to lead, if it was so bad that Obasanjo didn't want Bola Tinubu to lead, if it was so bad that all the churches in Nigeria, most of the churches, I have to say, did not want Bola Tinubu to lead, if it was so bad that most of our celebrated stars on the silver screen did not want Tinubu to lead, how difficult was it for these two men to talk together and be able to garner 13,000 votes, which they got as separate people? They got 13,000 as separate people. It meant nothing. It meant that the 38% Ghana of votes is going to rule Nigeria. It means that as much as 62 it will be percent did not vote for Bola Tinubu. 62% of Nigerians did not vote for Bola Tinubu, but Bola Tinubu will most likely be sworn in. He's already received the certificate of return. He'll be sworn in. Why? Because people refuse to listen and people refuse to talk to each other. These two men had been together in 2019. Unity is always very, very, very important. Unity for political purpose is always very important. Later tonight, I'll get you the classical definition of political parties, and you see it says in it that they are a group of men united by their joint endeavors, come together to do blah, blah, blah. I'll get you the full definition. So it's a lesson for all politicians, and all young people want to be politicians. It's always a push and pull. You win some, you gain some. You have to do the negotiation. When you take the decision that I'm walking away, nobody walks away to win. You always walk away to lose. You can make an impact, like Peter Obi has made an impact. No doubt about that. Peter Obi is my candidate for the election. He's made a major impact, but he's lost the election. He's not going to have executive power. Bola Tinubu will have it. Whether he's 70, whether he's 80, whether he's 95, whether he's 200, Bola Tinubu, all things being equal, he now has a certificate of return. He is the official president-elect of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because Obi and Atiku refused to speak to each other. I'll end on the note back on the montage of the Nigerian montage. Let's see it again. We end on that. We come back to President Mahama. Bello will come later, and then we do the figures. It's 20 minutes at the top of the hour. 10 o'clock, we're going to deal with the President Mahama story from Ho tonight. Here is the end of our Nigerian analysis. This is the montage.
Work for the unity, happiness, and harmony. We must not act like that orchestra that has no direction of a conductor. I hereby accept it. That money to serve you, be your servant, and not be your leader. To work with you and make Nigeria a great country. I take this opportunity also again to appeal to my fellow contestants, team up together. It is one country that we must build together.
Okay, 17 minutes to the top of the hour. President John Dramani Mahama, former president of Ghana, tonight launched his campaign in the Volta regional capital in Ho, where he talked about many things. We're going to show you what he said, and then we'll go to analyze some of the things that President Mahama said. One thing that was missing, we identified in terms of comparing to the 2020 campaign, was anything on education and double track. We'll analyze why that was missing. This is not the only speech that the presidential candidate is going to give, but this was the maiden speech, and we're hoping to catch up with all of these inside. Nonetheless, we proceed with the analysis. Before then, though, we have to congratulate President Mahama for accepting to run for president again. It helps the discourse, it enriches the discourse because he's former president. He has a lot to say. President Mahama, congratulations for deciding to run for president again as he launches campaign today. Let's go and see the text messages, though, that have come in on the Nigerian matter before we start the Mahama discussion. We're just giving people time to settle in. Get ready, get ready, get ready. We have a big discussion on John Mahama's campaign launch tonight. All right, let me start with you, Fatih.
Okay, thank you, Paul, and good evening to you, viewers. So from Fusaini Mandela, Fusaini says, this program to me is number one. It's a number one show, but recently my TV is misbehaving. I wish I could fix it to watch this particular one. Thank you for saying, and we appreciate your efforts. Okay, so from Akbar Tamali, what's happening in Nigeria will surely happen in Ghana here, because we, the good people of this nation, will never make a mistake and bring back to send the government to rule us in this country again. DMB will break the 8 for us. Okay, Karen.
Okay, Alidu Umar says, good evening, Paul. I don't think former President John Mahama is ready to come back to power, but I'm not surprised at all, because it seems he is only trying to lure Ghanaians to believe that he has new campaign messages and that he's trying to lure Ghanaians to believe that he has new campaign messages for us. By the way, his campaign messages has fallen flat. And then Jonas Penn says, congratulations to the city boy Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He will make Nigerians great again. And Lily Will says, this is why Alan should agree to be Baumia's vice president. Simple. Over to you.
So Odeshaba is saying that John Mahama should bear in mind that only his party members are the ones calling for his comeback. The bad records are there to show. Kasa Tintin and Toponko. As we speak, you are still taking all the benefits of ex-presidents, including ex-gratia, fuel, accommodation, office, cars, and others. So what is the justification of what you're saying? What else do you have to fix, heal, and repair when you've gotten such a golden opportunity and messed it up? There is absolutely nothing in your mind to heal the wounds of Ghana. We handed over lights to you, and you plugged us into total darkness that split many businesses. You froze employment and rendered many jobless. John Mahama, forget to cry. Alexander Sefa says, former President Mahama promised of scraping the ex-gratia in an unlikely event if he becomes president again. He promised the same thing in 2015 when he was president. Why didn't he scrap it? He has been president before, and we know his track record. He is the same yesterday and will be the same tomorrow. We don't have short memories as Ghanaians. Lastly, from Kofi Nat, John Mahama didn't tell Ghanaians about the doomso. Over to you, Angelo.
General Ortega reiterates a message he has shared. He says, Paul, all the major contenders to Tinubu, apart from Atiku, are all PDP disgruntled members and renegades. It's alleged that after losing the primaries, APC bribed Peter Obi to split the PDP votes, including Rabiu Juan Canso. Now, Zoom K Quality says, our country urgently needs a leader with an unwavering desire to get things done in a no frills, no thrills, business-like manner, and not one enamored with sloganeering, excessive partisanship, personal comfort, and shallow populism. Ghana's next leader should exercise sound judgment and be able to make the right calls and at the right time. A leader who accepts responsibility and works to fix the problem and not shift blame onto others. The leader should be one whose heart is filled with compassion for the people and who has the humility to connect with and understand the needs of the people he serves. Our country requires a visionary leader who will build a prosperous and progressive Ghana for all Ghanaians and not a few. We in the NDC will not run a government of slogans. Instead, we'll run a government of action. This is from JM as the whole campaign launch. Back to you, Paul.
Okay, so we are now ready to do the coverage of President John Dramani Mahama's whole event. So we isolated 5 videos that we'll be showing you, and then we'll do the analysis after. So in the first video, President Mahama talks in 29 seconds. He says that the election is about electing somebody who is experienced and not electing somebody who is experimenting. So President Mahama would like us to believe that he's the more experienced, and I think that makes sense. He's been president before, and he's alleging that other candidates of the MPP would not have that experience before, which is also true. None of the MPP candidates has been president before. Listen to President Mahama touting his experience.
I'm not taking this step lightly. It has been the product of months of prayer, broad consultation, and sober reflection. I've searched my soul and placed close attention to your voices, to your daily struggles, and to our present national predicament. At this stage, Ghana demands experience, not experiments.
Okay, so that was President Mahama talking about Ghana demands experience, not experiment. Tonight may not be a day for us to analyze it, but we'll come and analyze it later on. President Mahama is talking about experience. I said before that President Mahama has been president before. He has a great campaign. If he can point us to something he did then, some crisis he resolved then, and some crisis resolved now. Later at the end of this presentation, I'm going to show you what the Do4 campaign is going to say against President Mahama. They're going to allege that President Mahama is on the decline in terms of votes, and I'll show you why they say that. And you can have your say about that as well on the text messages. In the second video, President Mahama talks about why the delegates need to elect him as the flag bearer and why eventually Ghanaians need to elect him as president. In a video that is 3 minutes 42 seconds, President Mahama touts his credentials. Again, have a look.
Our present state and its effect on our people trouble me a lot. And this is why, as you have observed, at every significant wrong turn or decision taken by this government, I have, with the benefit of experience I have acquired, provided alternative solutions and even offered the expertise and knowledge of some of my party colleagues to help get us out of these challenges. And this is because there is an increasing gap right now between the Ghanaian society and the Ghanaian political system. And it is one of these reasons why a change has become absolutely necessary at this particular time. Of course, I know how to deliver that badly needed change. Because over the last 4 to 5 years, I've continued to study our problems. I've continued to listen to each and every one of you and to a variety of scholars and experts. And I can say with full confidence that I've learned a lot during the period I'm speaking about, and I'm ready and able to be the kind of president that Ghanaians are looking for. In our present situation, it is no longer sufficient to sit on the sidelines and offer suggestions which are most often ignored. I'm therefore coming before you in all humility and in response to the calls from my party and the generality of the people of Ghana to offer myself to serve this country and its people that I love so dearly by first putting myself up for election in the oncoming NDC presidential primaries. There are many who say that my words just before I left office in 2016, that posterity will be the judge, have proven prophetic in the face of the abysmal performance of the MPP government and their harrowing dismantling of our country's prospects. But my brothers and sisters, I'm not the kind of leader who derives pleasure from or who can smile at my country's failings, even the failings of my political opponents. As noted by Otto von Bismarck, a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. As far as I'm concerned, there is no vindication to be derived from the suffering of the Ghanaian people. I'm offering myself for public office at this time because I appreciate the enormity of the task ahead, owing to the level of damage that has been done to our country by this government. And I also know that such a mountainous task requires a steady, unifying, and experienced hand to build the Ghana we want together. And as I said, this is no time for experimentation. Ghana at this time does not need a try-me-too leader.
Campaign has just been launched, so not much to say about it, but just to say that is President Mahama calling for a change or is calling for a return? Because with him, it is a return, unless it is a change when President Mahama says that I did this, that, it was very wrong, it's not going to happen again. I have found why I did that because of this, that, so I will not do that again. Then his tickets will represent a change. But at this stage, President Mahama's ticket is a return. But Ghanaians must decide whether the return is good or the change is good, whichever one. I see the NDC handlers, and I would have done the same as a PR handler, to present President Mahama as a change, as a new voice, as freshness. That's going to be a tax to surmount. But they may be able to achieve it. They are trying hard to do that. I wish them well. But President Mahama's definition must be clear. Are you calling for change or are you calling for a return? If you're calling for change, then if it is you, originally, classically, that's not a change, that's a return. So if it has to be a change, that narrative must be generated by the Mahama campaign that this is not a return, this is a change. Because if it's a return, then Ghanaians are going to judge you on that. Once the MPP candidate comes up, whether it's Alan Martin or it's John Mahama or it's Dr. Baumia, they are going to now do a comparative analysis of records. And President Mahama is going to say that Dr. Dufour is already telling us that he handed over a healthy economy to President Mahama and said Tekpe. That's what Dr. Dufour is saying. He's going to say it even louder. Now, President Mahama must explain that collecting an economy from Dr. Dufour, as he says, same NDC, he says it was on a high, and you dropped it to a low at 3.4 by the time you were exiting. No international crisis, no COVID, no Russia-Ukraine war. The rest of the economies were doing well. If you look at Ghana's data, for instance, you see that in 2017 we were doing okay, 2018 we were doing okay, 2019 2020 we were doing okay. That's why I'm going to show you some videos of 2020 campaign. President Mahama did not say much about the economy in 2020's campaign. That indicates that the economy was doing well because this is a campaign, political campaign, presidential campaign. And if you look at President Mahama's advocacy during 2020, it was not much about the economy because he really couldn't say that. Today also we noticed that he didn't say anything about education. We'll come and analyze it and see. But as I said, today is day one of the launch of the president's campaign. We're not going to say much about it. Today is his day. We will just show you the videos and we'll do the analysis as the time goes on, as other candidates come up, and then we'll deal with it and see. Okay, President Mahama needed to promise, and we've always been saying that. Let's have a close look at his campaign and see what kind of promises he's going to make, because whatever President Mahama promises, it will be benchmarked against his time as president and also benchmarked against his time as vice president. That's very significant. So a man does not take a decision to run for presidency after he's done vice president and president and does not say that, look at my record. Today, President Mahama did not say anything about his record of 2016, 2012 to 2016. He didn't say anything about it. He didn't dwell on it. That ought to have been the only thing to dwell on if you are running for, you're almost like you're running for a second term. So when President Akufo-Addo was running for the second term in 2020, everything he said was, look at what I've done. President Mahama is running for a second term. At the launch of his campaign, he really couldn't say, this is what I've done. He said he's calling for change. But we'll deal with that at another time. Okay, let's move on. He had to make some promises, and we're trying to understand what kind of promises he will make. So here are some promises that we isolated in his campaign launch tonight. 3 minutes to the top of the hour, 10 o'clock. Yes, President Mahama's promises.
At the top of our priorities as the new government in 2025, God willing, inshallah, at the top of those priorities will be to restore stability and inclusive growth to our economy. This way we'll do this by bringing the various indicators under control to relieve Ghanaians of their suffering. We will strictly enforce prudence and responsibility in the management of public finances by cutting out waste and ostentation, which have become a common brand under this administration. Together, we will build the Ghana we want. We shall restore faith in our almost collapsed financial system and embark on sweeping reforms at the Bank of Ghana. We shall actively pursue policies to ensure robust local participation in our banking, financial, telecommunications, mining, agriculture, agribusiness, and manufacturing sectors. And all this will be anchored on our plan to grow the economy and create sustainable employment for our young people. We will make investments in productive sectors of the economy, like agriculture, industry, technology, digitalization, and tourism to spur growth and generate jobs for the teeming youth who continue to lose hope in our country day by day.
Okay, so that's going to be an interesting campaign, isn't it? Because if you look at the campaigns of historical campaigns of the past, Kwame Nkrumah promised that he was going to lead Ghana into independence. That was the purpose of his campaign. That's the way he focused his campaign. That's the way he won elections. Prime Minister Buzia came and said that we're going to do something different from what Nkrumah did. Because at that time, Nkrumah's government was thought to be unpopular, and Buzia won the elections by promising all of that. In 1979's elections, Dr. Liman and Moroi Gala and others, do you know what they promised? They promised that they were going to restore what Nkrumah did. Imagine 1979, Nkrumah's government ended in 1966. The PNP was able to win election on telling Ghanaians that we are going to do what Nkrumah did. The PFP and the UNC were divided, like we're talking about Nigeria today. So they couldn't put themselves together. But they also campaigned on what Buzia did. So you will see that in political campaigning, people have always campaigned on what has happened before. Even when it's not them in power, they use the heritage of their party. They use the philosophy of their party. Even when it's not them in power, they've promised the past. Okay. Then follow up to 1992. When J.J. Rawlings won the election and won, he was promising Ghanaian security. He said, look at what I've done over the last 10 years. Look at what I've done with rural electrification. Look at what I've done with cocoa. Look at what we've done with the economy, and elect us again. That's how Rawlings campaigned in 1992. He repeated in 1996. In 2000, Kufuor campaigned on the works of Professor Buzia, which ended in 1969. That's how Kufuor campaigned and won the election. He campaigned, and in Kufuor's campaign, he had to profusely render an apology on behalf of the Progress Party for sacking non-Ghanaians, the whole Nigeria must go situation that occurred under him, for which reason Zongo communities were not happy with the NPP. Kufuor said to them, I'm bringing you Aliu Mahama, the vice president. He's a Zongo man. Now we have reconciled. I beg you, forgive me for what Prime Minister Buzia did. Prime Minister Buzia was dead already, but Kufuor was running on Buzia's ticket because he was running the same political party. He found a need to tell the Ghanaian people that, forgive me for what Buzia did. I am not going to do that. I'm coming with a fresh, new Zongo person with me. So you are protected, Zongo people. You are part of Ghana. You are with us. That's how Kufuor won the election. In 2004, Kufuor campaigned on what he had done in 2000. In 2008, Akufo-Addo's campaign was solely anchored on the work that Kufuor had done. Nothing more, nothing less. Professor Mills, who came in with a winning campaign, dissociated himself from J.J. Rawlings because he knew that was a dangerous history. And he said, I am a man of peace. Because at that time, you know, the Rawlings versus MPP fight was quite dastardly. And so Mills had to come in the middle to tell the average Ghanaian, look, I'm for peace. I'm not interested in fighting Rawlings' battle and correcting something that had happened. And when they took us out of power in 2000, they did something to us. And I'm coming to do the same thing to them. I'm not coming to do that. I'm a man of peace. That's how Professor Mills ran and won on the skin of the teeth in 2008. Then in 2012, the campaign was about Mills. President Mahama's campaign in 2012 was anchored on President Mills. And that's why I keep showing you that. Please find that video for me, the NDC rally video. Mills had died. They created rally songs around Mills. NDC John Mahama, da 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 da, yes. That was Mills. You see John Mahama and DC, John Atta Mills. It's in the song I played for you. So the campaign on 2012 was anchored on history, on Mills, historical. Even though Mills was not on the ballot, but President Mahama was on the ballot. And then Akufo-Addo's campaign in 2016 was a repetition of the campaign he had launched in 2012. He repeated free SHS. He brought in one district, one factory that was new, one village, one dam that was new. But his campaign was anchored on free SHS, which is a campaign from 2008. So the campaign was historical. Then in 2020, Akufo-Addo campaigned on the historical. Here is President Mahama, who is promising something that he will do, that he's not able to make a single reference to the 4 years he ran as president, whether he encountered that, whether he did that. So he says that we are going to have local banks participate in our banking sector, whatever. Then he should have been able to say, when we came, we licensed 4 local banks, before us only 1 local bank, so that he's indicating the characterization of his historical government and telling Ghanaians that this is going to happen again. But when I get worried, when he's unable, really unable, and that's for want of a better word, he's unable to say in the historical past, when he took the oath as president, forget about vice president, you say that he's not in charge. He took the oath as president. For 4 years, he had the country in charge. And you are running for president again. The only thing you say is point us to what happened. But he says he's spoken to experts, and in the period that he has spoken to them, where is the believability quotient? How is it going to match when we draw the believability quotient of such a candidate? But it's all very new, so we'll deal with it. President Mahama also said that he's going to have 60 ministers in office, not more than 60 ministers, which is very welcome. We've all been complaining about number of the size of our government. We know what the German ambassador has been saying recently, so that's quite welcome. This is how President Mahama said it.
Shall assemble and operate the leanest but most efficient government under the history of our Fourth Republic. We'll reduce significantly the size of government. And as announced in my speech at the UPSA late last year, in a crisis situation like this, it is my belief that this country can be governed efficiently with 60 ministers and deputy ministers. We shall assemble and operate the leanest but most efficient government under the history of our Fourth Republic. We will reduce significantly the size of government. And as announced in my speech at the UPSA late last year, in a crisis situation like this, it is my belief that this country can be governed efficiently with 60 ministers and deputy ministers.
60 ministers and deputy, all 60. Very laudable, very, very welcome. And congratulations to President Mahama for saying that. Question is still, we will assume that President Mahama regrets having more than 60 ministers when he was president. We don't know whether the portfolio is bigger now, because usually the portfolios get bigger as time comes along, as different other things are added to the portfolios of ministries, they become bigger. We get the sense that President Mahama is saying that he regrets having more than 60. He now knows that he can work with 60 ministers given the crisis of the country. That's very welcome. He says 60 ministers. The most controversial promise President Mahama made this evening at home was about ex gratia, and people have been bashing him on social media. They are bringing out data of ex gratia that he has received, that he continues to receive, PECs that he continues to receive as former president. They are bringing all that. I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't work in the public service to know what ex gratia is receiving. But tonight, President Mahama said there will be an amendment of Article 71 of the Republican Constitution. What that entails, we'll tell you after you've seen the video. This is how he put it.
We will initiate and undertake the most far-reaching constitutional, political and governance reforms under the Fourth Republic, which will be aimed at restoring confidence in our democracy and governance systems while making life easier and better for the people of Ghana. In response to the concerns and calls from many of you, we will initiate and undertake the most far-reaching constitutional, political and governance reforms that will restore confidence in our democracy. We will continue and bring to conclusion the constitutional review process that was begun by the late President Atta Mills, which will include a review of the controversial Article 71 to reduce the number of office holders under Article 71 and reduce the disparities in privileges and emoluments vis-à-vis the public sector and civil service. The payment of ex gratia to members of the executive under Article 71 will be scrapped. And the necessary constitutional steps to abolish that payment will start in earnest in 2025. We will also begin the process of persuading the other arms of government other than the executive to accept the removal of these ex gratia payments. Issues pertaining to the excessive powers of the President, proper separation of powers, strengthening of Parliament, restoring the independence of the judiciary, independent and quasi-independent state institutions, and depoliticizing them will take center stage of the new administration. With renewed vigor, we will work to restore confidence in all institutions of state so that our people will see their institutions working for them as they should, with utmost professionalism and non-interference from political actors.
Okay, so that's ex gratia. That's another interesting topic, isn't it? Now, President Mahama talks about the Professor Mills Constitution Review Committee. Now, I have a personal attachment to that committee because I appeared before it, and I've showed you the video before, haven't I? Dr. Raymond Atuguba, who is now the Dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Ghana, was also Executive Secretary to President Mahama for the first 2 years. He sat right there. President Mahama inherited the Professor Mills Constitution Review Committee report. Nothing was done. So President Mahama should tell us that I regret not doing it. Now I will do it. But if you jump as if you are now seeing it for the first time, I'm sorry, sir. It was in your office. The Constitutional Review Committee report, it was lying in your office. The Executive Secretary who put that together was your secretary in your office at Jubilee House. You sat next door to him. You were in your office at Tuguba, the Secretary's office. I know where it is. It's next door there. So the thing was with you. You didn't do anything about it. You want to run for president in 2020. You didn't say you would do anything about it. In 2020, there was nothing about ex gratia. President Mahama didn't say anything about ex gratia. He talked about Okada. He talked about restoring nurses' allowance and all. He didn't say anything about ex gratia. Then he comes in 2023. There's an ex gratia conversation going on. So President Mahama says, I'll review. President Mahama, you can't say that until you tell us why you didn't do it first. You can't say that. You can't say you can't promise. You are incapable of promising. We will not allow that because it was on your desk. You didn't do anything about it. That's the problem with this campaign. The thing was on the man's desk. The person who authored this was your secretary. Raymond Atuguba was your executive secretary. He was in your office. He authored it. It was handed to you. 4 years, zero commentary on it. 2020-23, I will review ex gratia. Should we believe President Mahama or not? I don't know. I don't know. His handlers must come and explain some of these things because maybe Ghanaians don't know, but we know, and a lot of journalists know. That Raymond Atuguba was the author of that document. He was your executive. In fact, you appointed him as executive secretary, and a lot of us who appeared before the commission were excited that Raymond is your secretary. That means that the constitutional amendment is going to happen. We have been crying constitutional amendments forever, so we knew it was going to happen. I kept asking, personally, what's happening? And the response I get is that the president hasn't said anything. So really, and this Article 71 issue, the president of Ghana, Article 71 is under the executive, an entrenched clause. That means that people have to go to a referendum to vote. Somebody has to initiate the process. Now, the only person who can initiate the process is the president through his attorney general for an amendment to go to parliament, for parliament to first agree, and then it goes to a referendum. Those are the stages. So issue number one, President Mahama, did he write a letter to parliament indicating that he wants amendment of Article 71? The answer is no. He didn't. Therefore, if President Mahama today evinces an interest to amend Article 71, how should we put that in context? In what context should we put that? Because he's the only one who had the power of the pen between 2012, 2013, and 2017 to write to Parliament and say, I want a constitutional amendment. You can have a comparison. President Akufo-Addo wanted an amendment on how we choose our mayors. He initiated the process because only him can initiate the process. So if President Akufo-Addo is running for elections today and says that I initiated the process for the amendment, and I will follow it up. We can deal with that. But President Mahama did not initiate the process. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean he cannot do it now. But he should acknowledge that I could do it and I didn't do it, but now I'll do it. It's okay. There's no problem with that. He's a great person. He wants to be leader of Ghana. There's no problem. But the acknowledgement must come. Otherwise, it looks like he's taking us for granted. Because we gave the thing to you, didn't do it, and you say, I'll do it. What does that mean? It looks like, Mr. President, you are taking us for granted. You have to acknowledge, I could have done this, I didn't do it, but now I will do it. There's no problem. We understand that. Everybody will understand that. But don't pretend you don't know anything about it, that you're announcing. We will not allow you, because the record is there. We will always remind you of the record. I'm going to push out records of articles in newspapers during his tenure where the Civil Constitutional Review Committee reports what is happening to it. The secretary to that was your executive secretary, Monatu, but he sat right there. Nothing happened. Anyway, now after this ex-gratia conversation, some people put this up. It's a May 10, 2015 article. It's President Mahama. He says emoluments for Article 71 office holders will be abolished. President Mahama said that in 2015. And if you roll this over, you see it here. In March 2023, payment of ex-gratia to Article 71 holders will be scrapped if re-elected, says President Mahama. This is a Peace FM online story today. And this is May 10, 2015, City FM, City Online story. Emoluments for Article 71 holders would be abolished. That's President Mahama saying both. Well, for some reason, President Mahama didn't say anything about education. So we don't know how to place that. We don't know whether we should say that because the education argument is settled, and therefore the NDC feels that education is not a ground where they can compete effectively to win. I don't know. But he didn't say anything about education. In 2020, he had something to say about education. I'll show you the video. This is President Mahama ahead of the 2020 elections. Very big on education.
If you are spending most of your money on secondary education and less on tertiary and basic, then there's something wrong with your educational system. And so the government has budgeted 2 billion cedis for free SHS for this academic year. If you have 2 billion more to spend on education, will you spend all of it on free SHS so that even when people can afford to pay, they don't have to pay? Because today there's no system where if my child goes to a public secondary school and I can afford to pay, there's no system for me to pay. And so that ad hoc approach to education is something that is dangerous. Because in education, there are three most important things. The first and most important is quality. What is the use of education if the quality is poor? Why is it that at the basic level, every parent struggles to take his child to a private school? Because nobody wants their child to go to Saito. Because the quality in Saito is poor. And that is what Nana Jane was telling you, that we were trying to do something about by investing in the public basic schools. And we began to see the outcomes. The performance of the children at BEC continued to improve. And she was giving you some of the figures.
All right, so the whole election of Jenano Pokwajiban to be the running mate of President Mahama was a big story in 2020, and that's President Mahama talking about education in very great detail. But this time around, he didn't say anything about it. We understand that that's not the only message that he's going to give, that's not the only statement, but it's curious that it would appear that President Mahama's priority list, education, is not a big one. What seems to be the big one on his priority list is talking about his experience, and it also seems to be promising the 60 ministers. Somebody just sent me a text that tells President Mahama that the regions are now 16, they are not 10. So on that account alone, you're going to have more regional ministers. Where is the deficit going to be for us to achieve 60? And I can assure you, the young people on social media, they are very, very smart. They're going to hit all the candidates with these kinds of questions during this campaign. They're going to be very, very vociferous. And candidates must explain themselves correctly. We're going to have an improved election in Ghana in terms of the accountability of what you have said before and what you are saying now. That's going to be very big in the upcoming elections. Then President Mahama also talked about ex-gratia. Okay, so that's That's our report on it. We are separating that from the next thing we're going to do. Now, the next thing we're going to do is the figure crunching. We're going to show you how President Mahama has performed in elections in Ghana relative to the NDC parliamentary candidates. Now, we're going to pick that from 2012, how many votes President Mahama got in 2012, how many his MPs got. We'll compare that to 2016, we'll compare that to 2020, and then we will indicate to you what the indications are and why some people are campaigning for Dr. Duffuor. And then at the beginning of that, or at the end of that, we will play you the tape of Roger Metal-Nunu, the new supporter of Dr. Duffuor's campaign. Many analysts still believe, though, that President Mahama is the presumptuous leader of the National Democratic Congress, or is a presumptive winner of the presumptive winner of the NDC Congress. But that's a long way ahead. After the break, we'll show you the figures. How has President Mahama been performing relative to NDC MPs 2012, 2016, 2020? How is it going to be in 2023? After the break is Good Evening Ghana. It's still live. Later on, Alhassan Bello has finished with the number crunching. He'll tell us how many Igbos voted for Bola Tinubu and how many Yorubas voted for Peter Obi. We'll be back.
Eja Suzuza Arise for Ghana, operation of the land, for weather and seek your future, development our God. From vision to victory, the NDC shall lead. Able Democrat, Ghana, our strength in unity. From vision to victory, the NDC shall lead. Able Democrat, Ghana, our strength in unity. Eja bana From vision to victory, the NDC shall lead. Stable Democrat, Ghana, our strength in unity. From vision to victory, the NDC shall lead. Stable Democrat, Ghana, our strength in unity. From vision to victory, the NDC shall lead. Stable Democrat.
I was going to have a conversation with you tonight, and he said, why don't you start with him on Nigeria? Nigeria has just gone through a democratic election that has returned Muhammadu Buhari, over 70-year-old man, to the seat of government. He campaigned on anti-corruption and he's won the election. Yesterday you spoke a little bit about Nuhu Ribadu and the experience he had with Obasanjo's administration. But how do you, as an anti-corruption campaigner, how did you see the events that occurred in Nigeria through the election, which has returned a over 70-year-old man back to power?
You know, there is a sense in which the return of General Buhari to the presidency of Nigeria indicates that Africa is not moving as it should. Of course, there is a sense in which people are saying that we go back to the past, in a manner of speaking. And the selling point for Buhari is that he had a short stint as the president, as a military president, and he demonstrated by what and did that he was against corruption. And it's also a statement that Nigerians are tired of corruption and that Nigerians have identified corruption as a cancer in the Nigerian body politic. But why is it sad? It is sad that while other civilizations are now electing younger people, we are going back to the past. We are electing Buhari, which suggests that we have not developed a new crop of leaders, or that a new crop of leaders have not emerged. And that is because the old leadership has suffocated the new leadership which is not emerging. I would have loved to see that a 50-year-old or at worst a 60-year-old is the one who runs Nigeria. And my hope, therefore, is that Buhari will serve for only one term to set things on track and hand over the baton to a younger generation.
That's your expectation.
That is my expectation.
That doesn't happen often. Nelson Mandela did that anyway, but it doesn't happen often in Africa.
We seldom forget that Nyerere did it before Nelson Mandela, and there is a sense
Julius
Kambarage Nyerere did it before Mandela in 1900. No, he did not do one term. He did several terms. It was in different phase of the history of Africa, but there is a sense in which there have been good leaders in Africa. Sanseret Sekama, we have Kwet Masire, we have Festus Mogai. There are examples in Africa, but the tragedy of Africa is the failure of the African leader to realize that you are not successful until your successor succeeds.
You are not successful until your successor succeeds. Okay, welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for your time. We are now going back to the touch screen to do the number crunch, and I'm going to show you President Mahama, who launched his campaign today, how he's been doing in comparison with NDC MPs from 2012, 16, 20. We'll start with 2008, so you get a sense of it, because we start with Professor Mills and his relationship with the NDC MPs, how they've been doing. You'll find a certain trend that then changes in 2020. We'll get you all that details. Let's do some text messages now. 24 minutes past the top of the hour. Karen, what are people saying?
Okay, this is from Eno Brewer. She says, is it the same Mahama who wanted vice president's residence to be added to his ex gratia, talking about scrap, say no to legendary Mahama? Tamale Sabujida says, how sure are we you would cancel something you are still enjoying as a former president? At least show some goodwill by rejecting the monthly salary and allowances you enjoy as former president. John Dramahani Pa. Kwesi Ejenim says, experience is good, but since when did experience in incompetence become a thing? Daniel Akan says, hey Mahama, I have been laughing all the time. I don't understand why I'm laughing. Daniel, you need to tell us why you are laughing. Fatih, over to you.
Okay, so Lily Will says, oh my God, was Mahama not the president 7 years ago, and why didn't he do all this? Only in Ghana. Raymond Inso Agikaya says, good evening, Paul. We missed you and your team last week. Thank God you are back with your intellectual presentation. Keep on educating the youth for Mother Ghana and beyond. God continue to bless you and your team. Also from Junior Akbar Tamale, he says, I think it's high time we put it to our former president and tell him that enough is enough. We will never make mistake and let any propaganda government to come and take the coffee off this country and bring more hardship to the good people of Ghana. We need Ghana to move forward, and the man who can move Ghana forward is with us here. Dr. Baumia is the man.
So all the way from Tamale, Akonsi Garba says, good evening, Paul. Mr. John Mahama and the NDC party lack credibility and capacity to rule Ghana again. Mr. John Mahama started collecting Article 71 benefits since I was a child, yet Mr. John Mahama couldn't do anything about the ex gratia. Now listen to Mr. Mahama talking about scrapping the ex gratia, which he has enjoyed since I was a child and never rejected any. This joke can only happen within the NDC circles. Safianu Adam says, good evening, Paul and your crew. If the former president H.E. John Dramani Mahama wants to be taken seriously on the ex gratia thing, he must first announce publicly the forfeiture of all the emoluments being paid to him by the state every month under Article 71. He cannot mount a campaign platform and pretend as if he's worried about ex gratia when indeed he is a proud beneficiary of the very arrangement. He must lead by example. Safianu Adam Pusiga. JDM's flagship campaign promise in 2012 was to build 200 community SHSs in 4 years, but he ended up building only about 29. That's just about 14.5%, which is a big fat failure. A man who went to court without any evidence, and when he lost at the court, he ended up insulting the judiciary. How can anyone take such a man seriously? JDM is still incompetent. This is coming from citizen Bawa Atiku. Lord Derrick says he cannot make any references to what he did in his past government because he has nothing to show or make reference to. I think he's speaking in context to John Mahama, and he adds a few hashtags. He says, say no to Mahama, hashtag Mahama has nothing new to offer. Lastly, Daniel Akan says, Paul, seriously, what I don't like about Mahama is his style of being extremely politically opportunistic. He takes advantage of everything that becomes a public issue. It was Okada, then Article 71, ex gratia, and now it's 60 ministers. Mahama Kra, what should we do for him? Over to you, Angelo.
Bakari Ibrahim from Kumbungu says, good evening. Mr. Mahama's promise to scrap the ex gratia is belated. I thought he would have said, here is the ex gratia I took, so in my next government I'll cancel it. General Ortega says, Paul, the election and outcome in Nigeria is a complete sham. APC votes dropped from 15 million in 2019 to 8 million in 2023. Widespread manipulation and vote rigging. The outcome is not a true reflection of Nigerians. How does the APC win with deteriorated security in Nigeria, which was a campaign promised by Buhari, and he failed abysmally with Tinubu in the center of government? Now, this is from the Bono East region. It says the scrapping of the ex gratia is rich, coming from John Mahama. He has enjoyed ex gratia as an MP, deputy minister, vice president, and president. He should practice what he preaches. He should lead by example and return the last ex gratia he took. Kamal Amasama Brody says the APC has set the pace by breaking the 8, and the NPP shall replicate same in 2024. Instead of the NDC to concentrate on how they can collate their results in 2024, they're busy engaging the Electoral Commission on needless battles on the issue of the Ghana card. From Kaswa Republic, we have Paul. Undoubtedly, if the NDC doesn't support the Ghana card to be used as an identification document to register for the voter ID card, then I advise they mobilize their supporters to stay home when the EC sells the registration. Anyway, happy birthday to Mr. Afram Enim. Now from Sunyani, lastly, it says, good evening, Apostle Paul and your team. You're really doing a great job for Mother Ghana, and I pray you live long. There is Apostle Paul. JM said there's so much to repair, and I'm still wondering, because when there wasn't so much to repair, he couldn't repair it, especially when JDM handed over to JDM. On the issue of abolishing ex gratia, he should currently reject all what he's taking, free light, free water, free fuel, and others before promising us. Fellow Ghanaians, you trust at your own risk. Back to you, Paul.
Okay, so that's a text messages coming from our people. We're getting ready to give you the Nigerian effect, but let me just do this analysis that we pulled out from our own resources on figures and numbers for election. Okay, so as we looked at it, we found out that presidential candidates in Ghana over the last many years usually do a bit more in the voting than their respective parliamentary candidates. So it means that there's always a marginal skirt and blouse voting in Ghana. So when you finish and you tabulate the figures of the election, you will see that the presidential candidate usually garners more votes than the parliamentary candidates put together. So if you're MPP, all your parliamentary candidates put together, it should have a show lesser than the presidential candidate. It always means that some people voted for the presidential candidate that didn't vote for the parliamentary candidate. That always happens. Let's get to the touch screen and begin the analysis. So we start with 2008. All right. Now, in 2008, this is the outcome of the first round of the presidential election. Presidential votes 4 million for Professor Mills, 4,56,634 for Professor Mills. For the NDC parliamentary candidates, and you can see it on your screen, viewers, on the right-hand side of the screen is NDC votes, and the left-hand side is Professor Mills' votes. Okay, so you see parliamentary candidates, NDC parliamentary candidates gets 3,720,669. That's the difference. Let's move it and see the clear difference. The clear difference is 335,000 people voted for Professor Mills who did not vote for the NDC candidate. That was the reflection of the 2008 results. And I'm showing to you because if we look at the MPP side, you see the same thing where the presidential candidate is getting a bit more votes than the parliamentary group. So that's Professor Mills's record of 2008. Let's move on to John Dramani Mahama now. Okay, now this election 2012, okay. Now, in election 2012, President Mahama garnered 5.5,761,000 votes. NDC parliamentary candidates garnered 5.1,027,646,000 votes. Let's see what the difference is. This is the difference. This is the highest number of votes difference between a presidential candidate and a parliamentary group in the history of the Fourth Republic. This one, John Mahama's 447,000 votes garnered over the NDC total. The aggregate of the NDC parliamentary votes in 2012 was 447, is by far the highest in the history of the Fourth Republic. Now, it came up in the election petition where the petitioners complained about this situation, that how come President Mahama is getting more votes in such a huge excess of the candidates, even though that's not quite normal. But this is the President Mahama record. I'm building it up to 2024, and I'll tell you why the opponents of President Mahama are saying that he may not be a good candidate for the NDC. President Mahama, this is 2016. Now, 2016 is when the NDC lost an election quite heavily, and this is what happened. President Mahama is gaining 212,000 votes off what the parliamentary candidates got. Now, all of that, this trajectory, and you see it also in MPP at the same. It's the same thing you see in MPP. Maybe I should go quickly to the MPP one, and then I can come back to deal with the presidential election. So if you look at 2012 here, 2012, you see presidential elections here. President Mahama has 5 million. His parliamentary has 5 million. Difference is 447. You look at Akufo-Addo, you see he has 5 million, 5.2 million. Parliamentary is also 5.2 million. Difference 36. Only 36 people voted for Akufo-Addo in 2012 that did not vote for the MPP parliamentary candidates, the aggregate of it. Only 36, that's the data that we have. The only 36, that's what it is. President Mahama had a difference of 447,000. It came up in the court issue. Let's move on to 2016. In 2016, you will see that, as we already said, President Mahama has a vote of 212,747,000. That's what it is. And President Akufo-Addo now gets as much as 127,000 above his parliamentary candidate. So the record of 2012 still stands as the best record, the highest number of votes that any candidate got over his parliamentary elections. Now, this is 2020, what I'm looking for. In 2020, something different happens. President John Dramani Mahama gets 6,213,183,000 total votes. His parliamentary candidate do better than him for the first time. And it would appear that it's for the first time really in maybe any political record in the Fourth Republic. For the first time in 2020, President Mahama's parliamentary candidates are doing better than him by what margin? Here, 283,697. That's the focus of the Do For campaign. The focus of the Do For campaign is that President Mahama is a man on the descendancy in terms of his popularity within the party. That if you elect him as your party candidate, you may have to contend with these figures. We don't understand why this happened. This is the outcome. In terms of how it happened, the jury is out on that. We can all make guesses, but this is the outcome. And the outcome is significantly different from outcomes of elections in the Fourth Republic. It is only in 2020, and in respect of only John Dramani Mahama, that his parliamentary candidates, the aggregate of their numbers is higher than his number by as much as almost 300,000. 283,697 people voted for NDC parliamentary candidates that did not vote for President Mahama. That's a huge number. Significant. That's the only time it happened. This is the outcome. We don't know what it is, but that's how those who don't support John Mahama, that's what they're going to see. Tonight, we've seen one such person. It's a bit surprising to me, Rojo Metal. No, I've always known him as a Mahama loyalist, but Rojo is a sort of cadre. He comes from the older versions of the NDC. In an interview he granted to City FM's Umaru Sanda, Rojo seems to say that he will support Dr. Dufo. Have a listen.
On and on about me and not about Dr. Komna Dufo. I'm telling you that he is the best person in terms of leadership. to take us out of this economic quagmire. And that is my position.
Is your position either Dr. Kwabena Duffuor or the highway, or if he loses, you're willing to support anybody else that the party produces?
Well, the party has an opportunity to allow the grassroots to decide who leads them. I will respect the will of the electorate. I trust that if NDC conducts the elections, listening to the grassroots, and we are able to let them understand the current challenges we are going through, they will give Dr. Kwabena Duffuor the opportunity to lead us out of the current situation we are having. It has nothing to do with me liking John or not liking John. I'm thinking of the best that Ghana can offer through a leadership opportunity of Dr. Kwabena Duffuor. I love Ghana absolutely. I've been there for Ghana since 1992 in the strong room. I'm the longest serving representative of any political party in that Electoral Commission strong room. And I want to reassure you and all Ghanaians and all listeners that fairness, transparency, integrity of leadership of the EC is what we must be demanding.
Roger, thank you. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so you get the. I'm quite surprised about this, and it's quite new, so it's not yet been digested correctly. So we don't have much to say about that. But that's Rojo. That's the voice, unmistakable voice of Rojo Metil Nunu, who tonight is saying that he will support. And I'm saying to you that those people who are building up support for Dr. Duffuor are doing so based fundamentally on this outcome, and they are thinking that look. President Mahama is not even as popular as the NDC parliamentary candidate, the aggregate of it. If you go again with President Mahama, you may have difficulty. But we don't know what will happen in elections. President Mahama could win. Anyone could win. That's the nature of elections. It's like football, isn't it? But the campaign is a long way ahead. It's now 20 minutes to the top of the hour. Now we are ready for the Nigerian crunch analysis with Hassan Bello. Let's start, though, with text messages of what people are saying about the Ghanaian situation with President Mahama's campaign launch and all the analysis that we've done. I'd like to start with you, Karen. What are they saying?
Okay, sure. This is from Augustine Asari. He says the confidence of Mr. Mahama, if he loses again, he will not be the same. You are now studying our problems and learning about our problems. Dennis Opon says, is this the Mahama that told the Unemployed Graduates Youth Association that he's not a magician to create job for them? Rafat Hussein is saying GM in 2015 promised to abolished the ex gratia. He didn't, but stayed and enjoyed it fully. He's just like the same wine with the same taste in a brandless bottle. We've not forgotten who he is. Ghanaians are aware of what he did and what he said to graduates when we asked him for jobs. And last from Ustaz, he says, good evening, Paul. Don't mind ex-president Mahama. He's just ranting. He's not returning to anywhere close to the presidency, not even in his next world. Fatih.
So from Amidu Abdul, he says John Mahama have nothing new for the NDC and Ghana as a whole. Let's move to Jabba N80. Baumia is light years better than Mahama because the Mahama we know is incompetent. We haven't forgotten about the light out Mahama caused us. Abdul Rahim says Paul Adom Otre is doing God's work. Amidu Abdul come again and he says, may the good Lord bless you for hosting such an educative program. Also from Journalist Ghana, he says one of the credible journalists in Ghana.
Okay, so Enina Kwesi says, so Rojo of all people is campaigning for Dr. Duffuor. What happened? Someone who was a witness for JM during the 2020 election petition. Al-Hassan Dawda says, Mr. Paul, indeed you are too much. Ghanaians have tried and tasted this populist man. But my question is, what prevented him from implementing all what he is now saying to Ghanaians? We are not short memories, as he claimed from Bako and Yendi. Nana also says Mahama has virtually bought the NDC party. None of the so-called national rescuers are bold enough to present a new presidential candidate apart from him. Coming from Lily Rose, he says, this Prof. Lumumba, all he knows is just talk. Kwame Tipunasa says, how can a man who has been enjoying the ex gratia for the past 7 years and still enjoying come to tell us that he hates it and will scrap it when voted to power? Flip-flopping Mahama cannot be trusted and should not be taken seriously. Lastly, from Gariba Akonsi from Tamale. Mr. John Mahama and the NDC told Ghanaians that they have chewed the meat to the bone, quote and unquote. After the youth demanded jobs from the NDC administration, Mr. Rashid Papu also told Ghanaian youth to go and cut grasses and stand by the roadside for people to buy if the Ghanaian youth do not have jobs to do. The NDC party doesn't have the shame if they are talking to Ghanaians. If the NDC and Mr. Mahama have forgotten their past, I'm sorry to tell the NDC that we Ghanaians haven't forgotten the NDC's past, especially the Dumso. Teachers' allowances were taken off, nurses' allowances were also taken off, and 3 months' salaries paid to teachers after teachers work for 12 and more months without salary. The NDC had lost the 2024 election before the due date. Over to you, Angelo.
Right. Master Planner Jr. from Kentapu says, ex-President Mahama should stop wasting his time and his money for campaigning. All these promises are just to win power. He cannot fulfill them in 2024. Dr. Balmea will beat him fin fram. Right. This is from Abdul Ganiu Mankagrigo. I'm sorry for butchering your name. He says a man who requested to keep our nation's vice president bungalow as part of his ex gratia. Now moving on, we have from Emmanuel Close. He says, we gave you the chance to the highest office. What you gave is the best you could. Thank you for your service. Now take rest and let Ghana move on. A country over 30 million never lacks fresh minds to serve. Now Konyo Komla replies to that by saying, unfortunately, you are not the only person who decides for the masses. Now this is from Zoomk Quality. He says, I'm aware of the extent of work that awaits the next government. There is so much to fix, there is so much to repair, and there is so much to heal. But I'm set and ready, very ready, to build the Ghana we want together with you. Our mission is to get out of the current nightmare and to get out of it together, reaching to one another, listening to one another, providing hope for all, working with a pool of experienced, talented and passionate men and women, and with many others from non-political backgrounds, including the private sector and civil society, who simply want the best for Ghana, who desire to transform our country and its people. It can and it will be done. Lastly, this is from Aaron Babako Koko Misa, watching us from Latevia Koshi. He said, we are tired of political gimmicks, dynamism, and rhetoric from political figures or respected dignitaries from the political fraternity just because we can't see realistic policies in their speeches, but promises in their presentations or speech. I think it's about time we critically assess political leaders' policies they put across, but not the promises they make. Back to you, Paul.
Okay, that's all very interesting. And now we go to the touch screen again and start with Alhassan Bello. Do we have a break? One more break to go? Okay, let's take the break. When we come back, Bello will be on the touch screen. We'll begin with those of you who are interested in Nigeria. And I guess most of you would be, if you are feeling sleepy, just grab a cup of tea and wait for this. This is very good. But if you have to sleep, so you go to work tomorrow, it will be on our social media page. It's video on demand. You don't lose it. So you can always get it. We'll package it nicely for you. That's what we do all the time when we close from work. We stay and do that. So Bello will be on after the break on that one. And we are still on. It's 15 minutes to the top of the hour at 11. This is Good Evening Ghana and it's live. They're going to say that here goes Lumumba,
yes,
a dictatorialist,
yes,
supremacist,
and I'm prepared to receive all
Under
the
what
verbs.
conditions should we limit political association?
Look at countries which are multi-ethnic. If people organize political parties around ethnicity, I think that should be stopped. I believe that we ought to recognize that in order to ensure that the political parties we form have a national character, we should not have political parties which will address narrow ethnic interests. So that if you want to register a political party in a multi-ethnic environment, you must have membership across the board as a condition precedent to its being registered. That, I think, is a limitation that is necessary. Freedom...
No, I'm talking about why we think only one political party must exist.
No, one political party, no, not one political party.
because
party.
Kwame Nkrumah passed the law in Ghana, which you may not be aware of. He entitled it the Avoidance of Discrimination Act.
Yes.
And the Avoidance of Discrimination Act was passed because there were parties that were formed along ethnic lines.
Yes.
Incidentally, when he had passed that Avoidance of Discrimination Act, all of those little parties formed what you call the United Party.
Yes.
And so they formed the United Party, which became the big opposition.
Yes.
Its antecedent is the opposition party in Ghana today, the MPP.
Yes.
So that's an interesting history about that. But Nkrumah titled it the Avoidance of Discrimination Act.
Yes.
Is that the kind of view that you're expressing?
No, let me be understood very clear. I don't support one-party state.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that you allow plurality of views through institutions that do not represent narrow interests. So allow the political parties, but ensure that if a party is going to be registered, it must on the face of it represent the national face, because it is only then that is capable of articulating a national agenda. So that what one must do is to ensure that individuals who are going to run with their ethnic groups are not allowed to do so. But you remember this, the problem in Africa, because parties are not ideologically based, and Chinua Achebe talks about this when he talks about Obafemi Awolowo in the 1960s, that while Obafemi thought that he was speaking for Nigerians, when he looked behind, he saw that it is not the singer, is not the song that the people were responding to, but the singer. So most of his people who followed him were his own Yoruba, and so too with Nnamdi Azikiwe. So the African populace, the African illiterate, the default position is that they revert to their default instincts of ethnic association. So that is the next battle. The next battle is to ensure that we tell Africans that political parties are merely vehicles for articulating your interest in agriculture, in education, in health, in infrastructure, and that then becomes the platform of determining whether a political party ought to be elected into office.
All right, we are back on the touch screen with Hassan Bello. Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Okay, so what is your interpretation of this? We've been talking about this for the last 1 hour here in the studio, viewers.
Yeah.
It's shocking, isn't it? This is the Nigerian map of how they voted. Okay, well, not how they voted, but the number of people who were registered, number of people who voted. We are finding the total number of registered voters in 200 million Nigeria to be 93.4 million. Okay, Bello, take us through the rest.
It's very alarming that you look at the registered voters, as against the low voter turnout. It's just quite...
The voter turnout on the data is low.
Yeah.
But in the audio visuals, it doesn't look like it was low. Lagos, for instance, it looked like everyone in Lagos was voting.
And that is what people still don't understand what is going on. And then...
Something dramatic has happened.
And if you look at the clamor by the youth,
yes,
that the voter turnout...
audio visual evidence of voter turnout was high. The data is putting it at 27%. So how many people voted actually? The millions, how many were they?
This is the total vote casted, which is 24 million people.
24 million?
Yeah, approximately.
Is the total valid votes valid?
Yeah, total valid votes.
So the vote cast was 25 million.
Yeah.
So in Nigeria's 200 million, only 25 million turned out to vote.
Which is the lowest in the Fourth Republic so far.
In their history,
Yeah.
But that's shocking. I mean, for the kind of election we saw.
Yeah, the whole...
We thought everybody was voting.
The opinion polls.
Yeah. This is... So 68.4 million did not turn up to
abstained.
Vote.
And a lot of reasons have been... A lot of reasons have been cited for this.
That's a whole lot. That's a whole lot.
Yeah, and then a lot of reasons were given to justify this. Some are looking at voter apathy in the first place. You know, there was this... People thinking the government was a bit incompetent. If you look at the problem the country is facing from economic security down the line. And then looking at the tickets.
They were not attractive.
Yeah, some tickets were not attractive.
What were they looking for? There was Peter Obi there.
You know, even when Tinubu went for Muslim, what do you call it? I think that was what created the voter party in the first place.
Tinubu's running mate is Muslim.
He's a Muslim. If you look at
double Muslim tickets.
Yeah. It's just a repetition of what we have in 93, where Abiola and Baba Gana Kingibe.
Oh, they were both Muslims?
Both Muslim. The same...
Baba Gana Kingibe, I remember
the same
Abiola's running mate.
Yeah, the same Southwestern Muslim.
The same kind of thing. They were not Northerners. They were south. Both of them were
No. The running mate, just like Tinubu's running mate, is calling from the northeast, Borno State.
Okay, so that's where Babagana Kingebi came from.
So it's like Tinubu just repeated the same
Abiola situation.
But if you look at the hula balu and the agitation and the rancor, anger that came through that ticket, you could see, you can understand why there's a bit of the voter apathy. And then secondly, the change of the Naira notes.
Yes,
affected people's ability to move around, and that
to move. That may make
Imagine
to move around. Why did their votes? Why is their vote far away from where they live?
It depends.
Because voting is usually done in such a way that
some people have to go back to their states to vote, and then when you don't have cash with you, you can't even travel back to your state to vote. And some you call here from what you call it rural areas coming to urban areas to vote. Due to insecurity, you also have displacement, IDPs. So a lot of factors.
That's okay, but does it account for 68.4 million?
So these are like series of factors. The apathy, in addition to this,
and the apathy was not reflected in the
and then
visuals.
Security concern.
Security maybe, but the apathy was not reflected in audio. Unless, of course, the early morning announcements that came from the voting, the violence,
and I think the delays,
and the killing, and all of that. Maybe people decided to stay away.
And the delays also could be a factor. If you look at some up to 10 a.m., there was no voting material, no.
Even up to 2 p.m.
No EC official. People could just have gone home also out of that.
But is that 68.4 million?
What?
That's twice the Ghana population. Twice as many people in Ghana did not turn up to vote when they were on the electoral.
We're just about 30 million.
Okay, no problem. We will let viewers continue to have a jojo about this one, but this is very, very interesting. I don't know whether Nigerian media are doing it. Okay, now let's get to the analysis now. So the point being made is that we want to first look at the tribal distribution of the vote. Would you say that this election...
This is not for this election.
This part is not for this election.
This is 2019 election, and this is how both parties...
This is how they ended up in 2019?
Yeah, the PDP...
So mainly two parties?
The PDP and APC, and the red portions were for PDP.
Red is PDP. So PDP is largely south.
Yeah.
APC is north.
Yeah, and you quite remember, that ticket was a joint ticket between Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi.
Okay.
This is how they fed against APC.
Atiku Abubakar, who is from
Northeast Adamawa State.
Adamawa State. Okay, he won that one.
Yeah.
And he's won it again.
Yeah.
But they were losing Kano, Jigawa, Katsina, Kaduna, Bauchi, Gombe, Borno, Zamfara, Sokoto.
So like
they were losing everything.
So
Buhari was cleaning all of this up.
So apart from Adamawa,
yeah, but Lagos is showing APC.
Yeah, apart from
why would Lagos show APC in this analysis? Tinubu?
Yeah, Tinubu. That was.
I see.
And but you see, apart from Adamawa, Taraba, and Plateau State, and Benue, they lost in the entire north.
This time round?
No, then.
Then, okay, all right, okay. This map, 2019.
Yeah, this 2019.
They lost in the entire north. We get that.
North.
Okay. Now this election, they divide each other.
And then, quite interesting, in 2015, APC won Abuja. In 2019, it lost Abuja.
APC. Is this Abuja?
Yeah, no, this is Abuja. PDP won.
So red is PDP.
Yeah.
So PDP won Abuja.
In 2019.
And this time, PDP lost it to Labour Party. Yeah. Okay, so we can assume that Abuja was won then because of Peter Obi. Yeah. We can make that assumption. Yeah. All right, let's get to the new.
So they have to give us that.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is the.
All right, now let me ask you the question on the tribal analysis. Let's identify the Yoruba states. Did they all vote for Tinubu? If it is so, then we have to then look at Igbo states. Did they all vote for Peter Obi?
With the exception.
If it is so, then we go to, is he Hausa? PDP
no, it's Fulani.
Yeah, so we'll go to the Fulani constituency. Whether if that's so, we can make a conclusion that both of them garnered significant votes from their tribal home. And therefore, Nigeria is still largely tribal in terms of the outlook. So let's do that. Let's start with Igbo states.
But then for the Fulanis, we can't isolate them because they are
all over. They spread all over.
All over the north.
Okay.
So that's why it's always been the Hausa Fulani, just to simplify.
So let's start with where are the states that are Igbo states?
These are the Igbo states.
What are they called?
Enugu
Rangers is a football club that JJ Okocha played for.
Sure, that's another Igbo state.
That's what all Igbo young men go to do.
Anambra, another Igbo state. And then you have Imo, another Igbo state.
Okay.
And then you have Ebonyi, another Igbo
Let's look at some of the results from, say, one of the Igbo states. Put in here. So wait. We are understanding that Peter Obi won most of the Igbo states. So he got tribal votes in his favor, significant. Let's look at any one of the results.
So let's look at his home state.
Yeah, where's his home state?
Anambra,
okay. Can you make the results bigger, or that's what we get?
Oh, no, I think that's what we only get.
Okay, so in Anambra states,
APC polled
5,111. PDP pulled 9,000 and Peter Obi pulled 584,000 in his home state.
621.
I see. That's significant.
Yeah.
So he won his home state.
Won his home state.
Okay, so can you conclude that all the Igbo states here have been won by Peter Obi and won significantly?
Sure.
Okay, now what about these red states in the middle of the map, which is not Igbo?
So this portion are part of the North Central. Even though these also are not so.
And that's close to Abuja, isn't it?
Yeah, and these are also this is another North Central state. This and this.
Okay.
But then out of the North Central, he won 3. Two states and the Federal Capital Territory. And then let's look at the gap.
Okay, so in Plateau, what's the tribe is in Plateau?
We have the Ngas in Plateau. That is Yakubu Gowon's people.
Okay, so that's minority group.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they are the main tribe in Plateau.
Sure.
Okay, and their hero is Yakubu Gowon of the first school. All right. So APC gets 307. Labour Party gets 466. It's close, isn't it?
Yeah, it's close.
It's close. So why did Peter Obi win that place? That's not Igbo. Why did he win it?
You know, there was issue of religion and then ethnic tension in Jos. Prior to APC coming to power, we had header farmer clashes even under Jonathan's watch. And that was one reason why APC was given the chance, because of the insecurity in Nigeria at the time. And then when APC got to power, there was also this continuous attack between the Fulanis and the farmers. And people felt Buhari's response was very slow, perhaps because he was an ethnic Fulani, because people didn't see that kind of hastiness to address the issues. Only after each attack, they hear the announcement of mobilization. But there was no serious attempt to forestall some of those attacks. So that could have accounted for the anger. And then when you go to places like Jos, which is the capital of, what do you call it, Plateau State itself, you got to a point where enclaves were now being created, where each two communities that were interrelated, it just become a Muslim enclave exclusively, or exclusive Christian enclave. So there was that division. And I think people felt that their interest is best represented by Peter Obi. And so decided to kick away APC.
Okay, so this is the central part where Peter Obi was able to gain votes that were not tribal.
Yeah.
That he probably gained the votes on his narrative and the confidence.
Sure, and these are the only part of the North he penetrated.
I see.
Because these are not central states.
Okay, all right, no problem. Let's then, so we settled that Peter Obi won his tribal votes, but he was able to raise votes in areas where he doesn't come from on the basis of his narrative and credibility.
Sure.
All right, let's do Tinubu. He's Yoruba, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's go to the Yoruba
So
states.
he won every Yoruba state, excluding Osun State and his own state, Lagos. In Osun State, he lost it to PDP, and then in Lagos, he lost it to Labour. And then if you compare the two, you could see that in Lagos, NSAS was a factor.
Yeah, you said that before.
Yeah, and then for the first time in Lagos,
but let's understand why NSAS is a factor.
You see, people felt that the response, how the issue was addressed, the purported attack.
So the NSAS was about a toll booth?
The NSAS was actually about police brutality.
Yeah, general police
brutality.
brutality.
Spread across the southern belt of the country. But the epicenter of the protest itself was Lagos. And then the youth were assembled around the Lekki toll booth, which some believe that Tinubu has a stake in the company that is in charge of the concession around that place. So they felt that he was losing money, and hence he had to...
So did they stop the Lekki toll booth from operating?
Sure, when they were there.
So how did the cars pass? They freely?
They allowed the cars to pass, but then there was no...
They didn't allow the toll booth to collect the money?
To collect the money.
Okay.
So people felt that to prevent his losses, so he had to activate...
the military to go and clear the youth off the place.
Yeah, and then when the committee was formed to look into the matter, the governor denied having knowledge of the orders. Tinubu denied, and then so up to date, they've not been clear answer about who actually gave the orders for the military to attack. And
but in what capacity was Tinubu to be able to give orders?
Well, as a chieftain of APC, he could influence issues, and if you understand the absolute control he has in Lagos at that time, even if he's not the one that ordered it, perhaps he's the first person. For him. It could have been done for him, or he still take the blame. Either way.
Okay. So you strongly believe that NSAS was a reason. Let's look at the results in Lagos.
And then the turnout in Lagos also.
Let's look at the results in Lagos and let's deal with it. I told them to get Lagos for me. I don't know, but they say you should close it.
Okay, sure. Okay.
All right.
And
so the results in Lagos show that APC. Okay, let's start with Labour Party. 582,457, and APC 572,611. Very close.
Yeah.
So is it ordinarily
PDP was virtually out of the race?
PDP were out of Lagos completely.
Yeah.
Okay, so but is Lagos also not so cosmopolitan that Yorubas don't dominate
was one.
There?
The cosmopolitan nature of Lagos could be another factor. And then thirdly, safe is that Lagos State historically people don't vote, but the voter turnout this time. And you know, anytime there's a high turnout, it actually goes against the status quo mostly.
Correct.
So that could also be a factor that has created the situation. But then Tinubu losing Lagos is the biggest earthquake of this election, just like the previous election, 2019, when Saraki lost his dominance in Kwara State to APC. And then in Osun State, precisely.
What accounts for that?
There was this, last year was a gubernatorial election in Osun State, in which, PDP won. Davido's uncle, Adeleke. The previous one he lost was on a close margin.
Okay.
So APC has always had issues of division within Osun State.
Is Adeleke APC?
Adeleke is PDP. But there was a division between Aregbesola, the former governor of Osun State, and Tinubu along the line. And that division affected them during the gubernatorial election. So that could also have accounted for some of the reasons why APC didn't perform well in Osun State. But then aside Osun State and Lagos State, Tinubu did very well within the Yoruba zone.
Okay, so Tinubu also gained Yoruba votes. Where else did he gain votes that's not Yoruba? That we have to understand how they
he gained vote.
Niger, for instance, Niger State.
So Niger State is not Yoruba.
Okay.
You have the Nupe, you have the Nupe here. This is where Babangida is from. So this is a northern state.
Oh, so that Babangida is his man. So maybe that. Let's see the results in Niger State. All right, so the results in Niger State show viewers that APC got 375,183 and Labour Party got 80,452. PDP got 284,000. So PDP was quite strong there, but Niger was picked up by Bola Tinubu and 375,000. You said that's the home state of Babangida, the former president? Okay.
And then he did well in Kogi State also.
What tribe is there?
You have the Igbiras around this place.
Minority. And there also Tinubu won.
Yeah, he won.
Okay.
And then he did well in Benue State, even when the governor in Benue State is a PDP governor.
Governor is PDP?
Yeah.
And what happened there?
And that's another surprise because this is a North Central state.
And the governor is PDP.
Yeah, and it also has it has a lot of Christian population also. So
but Tinubu's wife is a Christian
so
pastor.
That's also accounted for.
Do you know where she comes from?
From Lagos State. Her church?
No, her tribe, her background.
She's a Yoruba.
She's Yoruba as well. Okay. Okay.
And then he did well in Zamfara State.
Okay, now why did Tinubu win? The border around Borno State is all won by PDP. How did Tinubu win that island? It then becomes an island in the context.
Two factors could count for this. One, his running mate is from Borno State, Kashim Shettima, who's a former governor and a senator in the National Assembly. And then secondly, they've been marked security improvement in Borno State as against previously when Boko Haram was rampaging within that domain. So security-wise here, they had a plus. But if you come to the northwest zone, is where security-wise there was lapses along the line.
What do you think is going to happen going forward? The transition and all that?
Well, the transition has begun. He has been given his certificate of return, and then he has moved to the guest house in the villa.
Oh, at Abuja?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the official residence of the president-elect?
There's a guest house within the building.
Within the president. So he's staying in the same place with Buhari?
Yeah. And for now, so he'll be given what you call DSS security, and as the preparation has been done for the proper.
When is the date of the inauguration?
May 29th.
That's a long way away.
Yeah.
Why is it so long?
I think the first handover in 1999 was done
followed
in May,
like that.
So it became that convention.
So between now and then, what the court process is going to start, because they've all announced that they're going to.
And then interestingly, whilst he lost in Katsina State, despite being the home of Muhammadu Buhari, security could have been a factor here. Along the line there was this rampage by banditry around this, around Katsina State.
Okay, it's not coming.
Around Katsina State, there was a time where the rural areas were dominated by banditry.
Yes.
And so that could be a factor. And secondly,
for PDP's winning Katsina.
Yeah. And the second, the ethnicity of Atiku as against Tinubu will also be another factor.
Atiku is original.
Atiku is an ordinary as against Tinubu. But then interestingly, in Zamfara State, which he called suffered from the same insecurity that affected Katsina State, he did well. And then PDP had some divisions within them in Zamfara State a year before now. And then secondly, some few months down the line, towards the end of the latter part of the last year, a lot of arms and ammunition were acquired for the military. A massive deployment was sent across the south and the northwest. So you could say, while we haven't had the rampages of these bandit groups, because now they're under enormous firepower, and that could have accounted for his victory in Zamfara State, despite the fact that.
But that means PDP did better than people thought they would do.
APC?
PDP.
Yeah, PDP
did better than people thought.
Yeah, some said.
But the election was really looking like APC won, Labour Party 2. Yeah. That's how it was looking.
Some people assumed,
even as the results started coming, it was looking like that.
Yeah, in some quarters, people said that APC didn't win the election, that PDP lost the election.
Well, it looks like that.
Because had they managed...
PDP is the biggest loser.
Had they managed their internal factionalism and other things...
Oh, they would have just won
it could have just been a repetition of what happened to them in 2015 when APC swept drained the swamp. So they could have just come and drained the swamp also. Wow.
Okay. Atiku Abubakar says he's going to court as well, and so does APC. So we'll keep an eye on that. And is there anything else we should add?
Well, for now... Kano State.
No, Kano State was won by
but you know there would be election. There will be gubernatorial election this time around.
Yes, it's in March, end of March.
And then
so you're going to see who's going to win the governorship.
The power struggle will still continue
but APC is running for it, and Kwankwaso has a candidate for that.
Yeah, and then in Kano precisely, if APC is not careful, they also lose Kano State, because there will be this fight between Rabi Musa Kwankwaso and the current governor Abdullahi Ganduje.
But do we know who won the parliament seats? Not the Senate, the lower house. Didn't they vote that on Saturday?
They voted, but there have been issues here and there. So
it's not clear yet who is winning the lower house. The Senate elections is in March.
Yeah, there have been court challenges here and there. So
I think the biggest story is the voter turnout and the Peter Obi's.
And interestingly too, I think APC equally won in Bayelsa State, which is Jonathan's home state.
Oh, good luck. Jonathan's home state, South.
Sure.
And APC won there.
Won there too.
That's interesting. 42,000 to Labour Party's. No.
I think they lost there too.
No, Labour Party won it.
Yeah, but then they performed. But it was a very close race.
It was close, but Labour Party
won. And then this is very close to home for what you call Peter Obi.
Okay.
And if you go back to the previous election, the map we showed, the 2019, it was almost like PDP had a run. So you could say at PDP, at Peter Obi and Atiku joined their ticket,
they would have cleaned up the South, all of that, in addition to what they have.
Yeah.
And maybe they would have won.
And going forward, I think the most interesting will be like Obi's future. If he sticks to Labour Party and they're able to manage themselves very well, because I think this is the last of the godfathers. Tinubu.
Yeah, but Labour Party need a big northerner
on
the ticket.
This could be the last of the godfathers.
Yeah, but Tinubu has already indicated that he's going to bring a very young man.
So going forward, the elections in Nigeria will not be about godfathers again. It will be more like an open ticket where your competency could count.
There are new godfathers emerging. Good luck, Jonathan and co will now be emerging as the godfathers.
No, but I don't think they will have the clout.
They may not have the clout, but his former president.
Because if you look at these guys, even Obasanjo has virtually lost relevance.
Well, but there are Fashola and others in Lagos are going to be the godfathers now.
If you look at the result in Ogun State, despite Obasanjo's attempt to undermine Tinubu, he was just virtually swept down the line.
Yeah, but I'm saying that there are new godfathers, don't you think so? Fashola is going to be one of those godfathers. All those who were ministers in Goodluck's tenure and Buhari's first term, they are all going to be around. And Tinubu is going to anoint a successor. He's already said that he's going to bring a very, very young man. Because he sees Nigerians want young people.
He's good in identifying talent.
He said that already. He also hinted that he may also be bringing a woman for the running mate.
Let's see.
He hinted that.
Because when he was a governor in Lagos State, Lagos had the most Nigerianized cabinet. He didn't care about your ethnicity. Once you have something to offer, regardless of your state of origin, you are brought on board. And that was what worked for him.
He just might do well for Nigeria. I mean, his age is still a controversy. People don't understand how he's able to be 70.
Another person we should look at in the future could be the current governor of Borno State. You know, there was this attempt initially when people thought this guy will emerge as APC's candidate, Osibanjo. There was this attempt that if had Osibanjo emerged as a candidate, then the current governor of Borno State should have been his running mate.
What's going to happen to Osibanjo himself? He's still young. He's former vice president.
Well, if you look at
he may want to look at it.
Well, Tinubu has equally disrupted the zoning in Nigerian politics now. I don't think everybody wants to talk about it.
Yeah, he's disrupted zoning a little bit.
But then
because Southerner Muslim, that thing
but should the zoning apply, then Osibanjo will be disadvantaged because he wouldn't be able to come back again. But
because this was a Southerner. Yoruba.
Yeah. Okay. But then if the zoning doesn't apply, then it becomes an open ticket. And a major...
The zoning is an expression of the godfatherism, isn't it? So if you are saying that there will be no godfatherism, then the zoning
but you see, it also worked very well because at the time it was one party perpetual rule. So you could recycle yourself. And that was another thing that affected Atiku and Obi. And that was another reason why Wike was equally challenging Atiku. Because he felt that Northerner has ruled. It was time for a Southerner.
Yes.
But the PDP's argument is that the Northerner ruled not on our ticket.
Yeah, but the zoning is for both, it's for every ticket. So if you know that the current person is a Northerner, you must know he's going to the South. So you find a Southern candidate. That's what I'm saying, that
in a competitive election, it becomes difficult to implement the zoning.
Yes,
when people have ambition.
Yeah.
But it was very smooth because for 16 years we had one party perpetual rule.
I get it. So right now, Tinubu is going to be thought of as a southerner, who is ruling.
Yeah.
So the next Nigerian president must be a northerner.
No, if the zoning sticks.
If the zoning thing works.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see how that goes. But we'll keep an eye on that. Al-Hassan Bello has done very well with helping us to understand what's happening. I've been watching Nigerian media, and I don't think they give the kind of information that Bello has. Thank you very much, Bello. It's 12 minutes past the top of that. 11. Let's take the last round of text messages, and then we deal with it. Let me start with you, Antoinette. What do you have?
Okay, so Frank Abu says, this Bello man is great. How is he able to gather all these pieces? Wow. Did Dati Ahmed perform in his home state though? He's asking Bello. This is coming from Obinelo Andy. Obinelo Andy also says, people believe that Tinubu could give the orders. He is presumed to be the landlord of Lagos. And Kaneshi Soldier Man comes to reply to him and says, Nigerians like conspiracies and assumptions too much. Figure out what really happened and stop with the conjectures. Bajo Deji says, Obi and his cabals paralyzed Nigerian economy by suppressing voters' cash money and plotting petrol scarcity in order to discourage the ruling government of the day. Lukman Mohammed says, congratulations once again, Jagaban of Nigeria, Ahmed Tinubu as the president. Al-Hassan Bello, my main man, always on point. This is coming from Kojo Efriye. Paul, elections are not won on, says Lily Rose. Hey, I couldn't recognize Hassan Bello earlier. This is coming from Danny Papa. APC rejected the Vice President Yemin Osibajo during the party's primaries and chose Bola Tinubu, who went ahead to win the general elections, for them to break the 8. This is coming from Nana Yao Edu. Lastly, Martin Luther Akoso says, please don't be so conclusive on the Nigerian project yet, because anything can happen between now and May 29, 2023. Mohammed S. Alakayi says, Lagos had a lower electorate turnout because most people traveled to their home state and hometowns to vote, thereby depleting the population of the urban cities. What would be the permutations if Obi had partnered Atiku? Over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Annette. From Alex 24, it says, even though it may be voter apathy, but the main cause was the majority of the voters went home because of violence, and again, people whose names were in the register were not allowed to vote if you don't support the governing party APC. The INEC was a stooge of the government, so the election was not transparent, free and fair. That's why majority of the Nigerians are against the results of the election. Hamburg, Germany. Maxwell Entry says, hi Paul, I'm watching you from Cape Town, South Africa. It's 12:50 a.m. here, but I can't sleep. I have to finish watching this program before I sleep. Fantastic program. Joy Apia Darlington saying, Paul, when will your history book be out? Anthony Ado says, Papa Lawyer Paul, indeed you are good. For your information, I will pick nomination papers and pay for you. We need you in Parliament. In fact, you have the facts. Party.
So from Alhaj Bob Sidi, he says, Paul, immediately I saw Atiku winning marginally against Tinubu in his strongholds and losing massively in Tinubu strongholds. I knew Tinubu is going to carry the day. My NDC brothers were waiting to use Atiku as yardstick if PDP won, but God showed them their destiny of losing Ghana's election. John Mahama is not and never the alternative to Ghana's recovery. We know his track records as the most incompetent president this country ever had. Also, this same Alhaj Bob Sidi comes again and says, Paul, the Nigerians have shown us the way to break the 8, and inshallah, it shall be done with Dr. Baumia. Paul, there is no way Atiku could win the election. Atiku is just like John Mahama of Ghana. Also from Gloria Ama, she says, the one number current affairs show in Ghana is Good Evening Ghana by Apostle Paul. Also from Kim Besson, he says, God bless you, Paul. Keep it up, bro. Angelo.
Right. Obinalo Andy says, people believe Tinubu could give the orders. He's presumed to be the landlord of Lagos. Lukman Abubakari, watching us from Germany, says, politics in Nigeria will not be the same again. Good evening to you, Paul. It's been a while. And lastly, from Junior Akbar in Tamale, he says, the reason why a lot of people refuse to come out and vote for the Nigerian election is that people are beginning to be fed up with the politicians, especially those who always come out and do propaganda and promise down to heaven. Immediately when the power comes to them, they will start doing what they want. Back to you, Paul.
All right, so that's it, viewers. Thank you very much for staying with us on a double edition for Good Evening Ghana this week. We'll be back another edition on Tuesday. Thanks for watching. We'll keep researching and we'll feed you what we got. Good night.